Dr. Sam Shay, DC, IFMCP, is a genetics functional medicine expert, speaker, and stand-up comic who helps people unlock their ideal diet, reduce inflammation, and reclaim energy by decoding their DNA and calming their nervous system. After healing himself from years of chronic fatigue, sugar addiction, anxiety, and insomnia, Dr. Sam turned his personal breakthrough into a mission. With over 25 years of experience in nutrition science, mind-body medicine, and genetics, he now guides others in building personalized health strategies rooted in their unique biology. Dr. Sam is the creator of the DNA Decoded program and the Neuroharmony model, two frameworks that fuse precision-based genetic insights with trauma-informed nervous system-first care. His work helps clients identify food triggers, understand how their body handles stress, and create targeted plans that help support clarity, resilience, and longevity. Whether supporting exhausted parents, health-conscious professionals, or individuals seeking sustainable transformation, Dr. Sam makes cutting-edge science feel human, hopeful, and empowering. Featured on over 200 podcasts and summits, he delivers each conversation with insight, warmth, and a dose of sharp humor, helping audiences turn their genetic blueprint into a roadmap for thriving. Welcome to the show. We have Dr. Sam here and Lily.
She's the real star. I'm the prop, not.
And so
I'm the mobile pet service.
Yeah, there you go. We're going to get right into it. And so tell me how you got into genetics. I know you have a very wide background of a lot of different health, medical things. So tell me how you got into the genetics part.
Sure. So I started my journey into going into medicine. I knew I was going to be a doctor when I was 6 years old. I
think you said your parents were?
Both my parents were medical doctors, specifically psychiatrists. My grandfather on my father's side was also a famous gastroenterologist who published over 300 papers before his untimely death, actually on the operating table from medical misadventure. And he died of a coronary while on the operating table. So I never met him. He died 17 years before I was born, unfortunately. So I knew I wanted to be a doctor when I was 6 years old, and but I became very ill. I mean, when I was 6, when my parents had a really what I call a nuclear divorce, and me and my siblings were caught in the blast radius. And I developed severe insomnia and a sugar addiction. I started drinking coffee when I was 6 to stay awake at school. And there was a lot of emotional, I was emotionally unhealthy at home, and then physical abuse at school. And there was no real adults who were looking out for me, taking care of me. So I retreated into sugar and screens, and I was anxious, depressed, insomnia. And then I had injuries from the assaults at school. And so I just thought pain was this normal phenomenon. And I still have a thoracic injury from that time period. And my parents being of their era, and both being born in the 40s and then being psychiatrists in the 80s, thought that everything was a SSRI deficiency, or I was attention seeking, as opposed to dealing with them being parents and actually dealing with all the other the actual environmental issues. And I was eating a diet that was like SpaghettiOs and high gluten. I was put on a low fat diet at age 7 because they thought my cholesterol was too high at age 7. Wow. And so I went on, I can't believe it's not butter, SpaghettiOs, like crackers, breakfast cereals, skim milk. And I'm like, it's just, and I had, as a result, I had really bad digestive problems. And I was also very pallid, and I had really, it was not good. It was not good. So in high school, I just made the decision, like, I have to do something different because this is not working, and I'm going to end up in the grave as opposed to in school. And luckily, I found a book called Dr. Jensen's Guide to Better Bowel Care. And Dr. Jensen...
In high school.
Dr. Jensen is considered like one of the grandfathers of naturopathy in the West. And he's published like 60 books. He's long dead now, but he because I had really bad bowel problems. And then I also found a mentor who did brain gym, which is a form of kinesiology. And I learned that the mind can be influenced by the body and by neurology. And that's when I wanted to then shift to natural medicine. And so when I got into college, I went really deep into both pre-med and a holistic health practitioner program on the evenings and weekends while in college. So I had a very different college experience. I was just totally focused on holistic medicine and the medical sciences, and then I got into like meditation and yoga and breathing techniques and just was just totally focused on that. And in nutrition, I started studying Weston A. Price Nutrition Foundation nutrition back in college, and actually ran a kitchen co-op.
Wow.
According to that. So my foundation, like I didn't. This is like college was 99 and 2003. Like I didn't get into genetics until 2016. Wow. So there's a long gap, and in that gap was I went to chiropractic school and got very heavy into nutrition and functional neurology. And functional neurology is looking at it's kind of the equivalent of functional medicine compared to Western medicine, where neurology is, you look at the on-off presence of pathology. Is it a problem? Is it not? And then what's the drug or surgery and so on. Whereas functional neurology is we're looking at the big gray space in between chronic to normal, normal to optimal, and then pathological on this side rather. So the pathology, chronic issues, normative, and then optimal. Functional neurology is really looking at the entire gray space of the whole scale as opposed to just on-off presence of pathology. Okay. And I love neurology because it's the master subject. Like you cannot do neurology unless you also know physiology, physiology, biochemistry, nutrition, anatomy, pathology, microbiology. Like you have to rehab. You have to know all of it to understand neurology. Right. And then I graduated and actually became a functional neurologist. I was that for like 8-9 years or so. And I flew around teaching other chiropractors how to pass their national registration exams after I graduated, and taught them basic sciences, clinical sciences, X-ray analysis. And then went abroad and had a physical practice there for 8 years.
Where?
New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
And then there I got an acupuncture degree, trained under an osteopath, and then got really into functional medicine starting in 2014. I had done labs when in school and just kind of along the way, but I really got dedicated to functional labs in 2014 when a patient came to see me. And by the way, this is the very first month I was in practice, I saw my first goiter.
Wow.
Yeah, an actual goiter. Huh. And I saw multiple goiters when I was in New Zealand.
Wow.
Multiple.
Why is that?
Not a lot of iodine or selenium in the soils. And a lot of also, they had this really Orwellian practice in New Zealand. I think it was in like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, or two of those decades. I can't remember. They had this practice in the grade schools called prophylactic periodontistry. Okay. Do you want to pick that one apart?
No. You can do that.
Oh, it's super Orwellian. Okay, so prophylactic periodontistry is where they would take dental nurses into the schools and proactively drill and fill everyone's molars with mercury.
Are you kidding me? To
prevent cavities.
Holy cow.
They would just give them fillings.
I think my dentist did that.
So what happens is that now you've got a lot of mercury in their system starting very young that's not going away. And the problem with that is you use a lot of thyroid problems in New Zealand. That's one speculated reason why, is because now they just got this slow drip of mercury, particularly when people eat hot foods or they chew hot foods or acidic foods, you can release some of this mercury. And then the mercury then sucks up all the selenium to try your body to try to detox it, but your thyroid needs selenium,
right? And
then there's on top of it, there's iodine deficiency in the soils.
Jeez.
So it's
is that a big thing still?
Yes.
In New Zealand.
Yeah. Well, it was when I left. Yeah. Wow. So
that's amazing.
So this patient came to me. She not only had a goiter, but she had almost every sign of hypothyroid I've ever seen. Like there's like a dozen plus signs of hypothyroid. Missing outer third of the eyebrow, thinning hair, cold all the time, overweight all over, painful joints, fatigue, just tired all the time. And she came. She said, "Oh well," and it was basically textbook. Like you can look at her, read her symptom chart, and it's like hypothyroid, likely Hashimoto's. And she said, "Well, my specialist said he ran my TSH and said it was normal, and then told me that I was just depressed and I have to stop complaining and just take an antidepressant." Yeah, I did not have as much diplomacy as you just had.
Right.
It was one of the few times I saw red.
Yeah.
I was so angry.
Yeah, when you want to, what's that doctor's name?
Yeah. Anyway, I told her through gritted teeth, I says, "I want you to know I'm not upset at you. Right. My energy is not directed at you. I am deeply sorry this happened to you. I vow to find you the correct constellation of thyroid tests, because what happened to you was wrong. You just got gaslit. There is more to thyroid than just TSH. I will come back to you." And that's when I found the lab company that I used over there, NutraScript, NutraSearch. Their platform is NutraScript over in New Zealand, and they had an actual comprehensive thyroid panel that had not just TSH, but free T3, free T4, reverse T3, anti-TPO, anti-TG, and also anti-TSH receptor antibodies, which you don't normally see.
Yeah, right.
And so that was my real introduction. It's like, okay, clearly functional medicine is not being practiced correctly. So that's when I really dove headfirst into functional testing, really deeply. And yeah, and of course it turned out she had like raging Hashimoto's that showed up as hypothyroid.
Explain to the people that don't know goiter.
Well, thankfully, that thing was supposedly eliminated in the 50s in this country, but is alive and well in other countries. Goiter is a lack of iodine that manifests as in the thyroid that develops what's called hyperplasia, which means like lots of cells. Like there's more and more cells that are made. Basically, it's like a tumor-like. It's not cancer. It's just a proliferation of thyroid cells. So it looks like a giant knob of your thyroid. Like the worst atom.
Late sign.
Yeah, late sign of Adam's. It's like the worst Adam's apple ever. So that's what a goiter is. And the fun that most people don't know what it is a testament to how much it's been solved.
Right.
So then progress on, and then in 2016 I was introduced to functional genetics. And it's in genetics now. At that time, I had like an all organic farmers market diet, and I was still dealing with fluctuations in mood, energy, and digestive issues, embarrassing gas and just up and down. And I had also crippling pain in my hands and across my fingers. And it's like, and I've had this great healthy food, and I'm taking my grandma fish oil and these other anti-inflammatory things. I just don't understand why with my lifestyle, I'm still feel like I'm falling apart and what's going on. So I did my genetics, and then it turns out from my genetics that I was a hyperinflamer. So a hyperinflamer is to understand genetics, there's the mistakes people make around genetics is that when they run a genetics panel, they're given like anywhere from 50 to 300 plus or more genes, with their attending 50 to 300 plus lifestyle recommendations with no apparent prioritization. So it's like, oh my God, I have bad genes everywhere, and I've got to do all the things, and I can't do all of them at once. I might as well give up past the Twinkies. Right. And so they kind of patients and clients careen into fatalistic nihilism of what is the point of all this, and they start talking in a French accent and read Sartre or whatever. it's not it's crippling because the genetics tests that are out there are overwhelming, and then the genetics tests also, they're like laced with all of this highly technical content of the RSID numbers, and it's like you need a decoder ring to understand this. And then when you read the thing, it says like you're at risk of rah, and it's terrifying. And so the way to properly understand genetics, which is why like I've worked with this company for over 10 years, is they were the first ones that showed me how to prioritize the genetics, and that you only focus on the genes you can do something about, and that you most importantly pick the genes you can do something about that are the ones that are the major drivers and controllers of all the other ones. So you don't fixate, you don't get fixated on all of these things that are wrong. You can focus instead of fixate. You focus on what are the fewest number of dietary changes, the fewest number of supplement changes, and the fewest number of exercise changes that will have the greatest benefit across the most important genes. So you're not scrambling and overwhelmed. So what I learned about my own genes is that of the hundreds of inflammatory genes that are directly or indirectly control or influence inflammation, there's only really like 15 that are the most important. If people are curious, it's 3 of the interleukin 1s, interleukin 6, interleukin 8, interleukin 18, TNF alpha, 3 CRP genes, 2 or 3 of the COX genes, and the 3 interleukin 10s. Those are the most important. And I had out of the 50, some panels have the extra COX gene on them, some don't. So just 15, 16, we'll just call it 15. Of the 15, I had 13 that were red and yellow dots, or like bad copies. Like yellow is bad, red is like extra bad.
And explain that. So heterozygous, homozygous.
Sure. So
Just so they know.
So the nerd. So
where are you getting that?
Sure.
Mutation?
Absolutely. So like the Scrabble words associated with genetics are heterozygous and homozygous. Technically heterozygous wild type, heterozygous, and then homozygous wild type, heterozygous, and then homozygous variant. So what homozygous means, homo meaning same, zygous meaning that the zygote, it's the version of the gene from both mom and dad is the same. So you get from your parents, you get 1 copy each of this gene, and they depending on how the sperm and egg recombine, there's different combinations of what version of the gene you get from mom or dad. So if you get 2 good copies, air quotes good copies, it's called a homozygous wild type, or a green dot. So it's a traffic light system. Heterozygous means you get 1 good copy, 1 bad copy, 1 from mom or dad, doesn't matter from which. 1 good, 1 bad, it's a yellow dot. And then the red dot, again, traffic light system, red, yellow, green. The red dot is homozygous variant, means it's the variant gene, or the not good gene version. You get 2 bad copies of the bad, that's a red dot. Now, the mistake people psychologically make when they read a genetics report is that, with only a couple exceptions, like lactose intolerance and like 1 or 2 others, with only a couple exceptions, yellow is bad. It's not middle of the road. It's not benign. It's not average. It's bad. Red is just like extra bad. And I have a theory as to how people's psychological relationship with the yellow dot, and I don't want to talk about politics, but you'll see the analogy will make sense in a minute. Your relation to the yellow dot, my theory, is how much you trust and you like and trust your government. Because when you're in Europe, the Scandinavian countries are very pro-government. They follow all the rules, and they're coming up to a yellow light. They hit the brakes, they stop, they wait. Europe, you go to Italy, you see a yellow light, you hit the gas as hard as you can, and like there's a totally different relationship with how people perceive their authorities. So when people who like don't trust the authorities, they look at a yellow dot and they're like, I'm fine, it's a green. Whereas people who absolutely trust the authorities, like, oh, it's a yellow dot, I have to really, stay the course, and like. So that's a pet theory. I have no evidence. It's just an intuition of mine. It's a fun sounding theory anyway. So I have, but from the reality is that we should be more Scandinavian in our intuitions when it comes to genetics. Whether or not it comes to one's government, I leave that to a different podcast. So, but from a genetic standpoint, yellows are taken very seriously. So I had 13. Now, the difference between functional genetics and medical genetics is that medical genetics, we fixate on one gene as causing one thing. It's kind of like germ theory. One germ causes one disease. Genetics is kind of borrowing that philosophically. It's like one gene, one disease. Whereas, which is, that's the Pasteur model of like one germ, one disease. Whereas Becamp, who was Pasteur's intellectual rival, says, no, it's about the terrain. You can throw any seed on, you can throw seeds onto concrete, you can throw seeds into fertile soil. The seeds will only grow under one condition. So it's the same thing. So his view was that people don't get sick with a virus or an infection or a bacteria unless the terrain or the human organism is weakened in some way to let the seed grow and flourish. Because there's a milieu. That's literally the word Becamp talked about, is the milieu. There's a constellation, a setting, an ecosystem that has to be sufficiently prepared in order for that seed to grow. Now, we're going to translate Becamp's view of into genetics. So I'm not looking for the inflammation gene. I'm looking for the inflammatory environment as such.
Okay.
So just on intuition, if I told you I had 13 out of 15 genes as yellow and red, am I hyper-inflammatory or it's all right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm very hyper-inflammatory.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean, like the terrain. Whereas someone who's got like 4, 5, 6 red and yellow dots out of 15, like they're actually, just from the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things I've run and analyzed,
Right.
they're fine.
Okay.
They have a way easier ride.
So with 13, you should be symptomatic. You should be showing signs.
Well, I was so growing up, I was chronically unwell.
Right.
When I had all of these negative inputs, whether it was physical inflammation from injury, psychological stress causing inflammation through a whole multiplicity of pathways, the really, really bad food I was eating, from candy and breakfast cereals, spaghetti, low-fat milk, none of this was organic when I was back in the 80s. High gluten foods, those little lunch like just really terrible food. It's a lot of processed food. And back in summer camp, it was, a candy bar was a form of currency. It wasn't a treat, it was currency.
Yeah.
So all this pro-inflammatory, all the different factors of lifestyle, like I was hunched over playing video games or watching TV to numb out. I was in, you clear most of your inflammation at night when you're sleeping, and I was an insomniac. I never had a growth spurt, by the way.
Wow.
Never had a growth spurt. So I'm like barely 5'6", and I've got size 11 shoes.
Wow.
And my hands are like they're much bigger from people my size.
Yeah.
And like my muscle density, it's like I'm toned, but if you actually like poke on, like it feels like a wrought, not to brag, but it feels like iron. Not that it's like I because I work out a ton. I actually don't. I actually can't, because then I overinflame if I overwork out. But my muscles were supposed to be stretched another 4 to 6 inches taller.
Wow.
And so they're kind of like I'm built like my Frenchie. I'm just kind of like 80% muscle. So I'm hyper-inflammatory genetically, meaning I'm way more vulnerable to chronic illness. So when all of these things happened when I was a kid, simultaneously, I was just chronically. Oh, and by the way, and for funsies, I got Lyme disease when I was in summer camp, and totally undiagnosed for decades. And I had Lyme disease. So I was just inflamed, but it wasn't just like, oh, I had all of these bad things happen. I had the genetics that made me hyper vulnerable to chronic overinflammation, which then led to chronic disease from a child going forward. So what I learned from running my genetics, when I got my genetics test, I remember very clearly, I was in the South Island. I was there for an acupuncture seminar, and I was staying in the guest room of a colleague of mine who's an acupuncturist, and I look at my results, and I see everything, and I cry for an hour. I cry for 2 reasons. One, I'm vindicated. I'm not crazy. I have an explanation as to why I've been so unwell and why everyone else who was experiencing a similar parts or all of lifestyle at one point or another, no one was ever as unwell as I was in my school or in my family. And finally I can see, now I understand. I'm not crazy. Like, and I actually forgave my body in that moment. And it was one of the reasons I was crying. I was like, my body was just trying to cope with the genetics it has in a mismatched environment. It was literally trying to do its best given the limitations it was born with. Then the other reason I was crying is I actually had solutions I never had before, because in the genetics reports, it was like, okay, now that you've got this clustering, what are the fewest number of nutrients and lifestyle changes needed to beneficially shift those 13 red and yellow dots? Not 13 separate recommendations, like the top 5 that will help across all of them, between the 5 of them, and in multiple different ways. Like some of them will be affected by all 5 of those things, and then some of those 5 things will affect maybe 70% of those genes. Like, what's the fewest number of interventions that can help the most number of the most important genes? Right. So for me, the hand pain, like I within a couple of months, all my hand pain went away. Wow. It's gone. Wow. So because I was a hyperinflamer, I was not doing the right nutrients at the right dosages. I was not doing all the correct lifestyle according to my genetics. And then dietarily, I found out that I was eating you could have written, it could have been written up in some wellness magazine, like the perfect, farmer's market diet. I knew the names of my farmers and their chickens, and it's like a scene out of Portlandia. So what happened was that I realized that I was eating a Mediterranean style diet, but intentionally I was eating a Mediterranean style diet because that's what, that's what I was eating, but it wasn't working because I was in pain. So something in my digestion and a mood and energy was all off, even though it was like a perfect Mediterranean diet, because that's what all the research said. Well, the research that's shown is I call bell curve biochemistry. That's what the average is. But what if you're not on the middle of that bell curve? Right. So genetically, it turns out I'm actually a low carb borderline paleo borderline keto diet, which means the amount of carbs I could eat from a Mediterranean style was completely out of my league to tolerate. And remember, I grew up on high carb, and it was a mess. So it was just not even, the processed stuff was only one super bad extra variable, but the carb density alone growing up was really bad for me. Yeah. So within 1 week of changing my diet to fit within my genetic capacity carb-wise, my energy, mood, and digestion leveled out. Wow. So now, I was 35, 36, and I would have done anything to have that section of the test decades earlier to completely change my diet.
That's something that I've always thought about is, at what age do you think it would be beneficial for people to get genetics tests?
So the age, there's a couple asterisks here. Assuming they get the correct type genetics test that's actually practical and helpful and not going to create anxiety and panic and all that. Sure. So something that's empowering. We're assuming this is an empowering genetics test that is going to set people up for success long term instead of psychological failure. Big asterisk there. I'd say the time to do it would be after breastfeeding would be the earliest. Wow. Because if they're breastfeeding, that's their diet. There's no ambiguity there. So that would be the earliest. I wouldn't do it on an infant who's just born and breastfeeding. I don't see the point of that. Okay. Unless you're checking for, just to be clear, the genetics that I run, I do not look at disease genes. The ones that come out like trisomy 21 or like this. There are genuinely pathological genetic combinations that cause meaningful, formative, permanent genetic things, or Tay-Sachs or whatever. There's a whole laundry list of it. Those are meaningful and real. But that's the difference between medical genetics, where that's what that's ideally suited for, and then functional genetics. Right. So I'm not discrediting those. Those absolutely have a place. And but my purpose is looking at what are the genes that are the drivers for chronic illness, and what are the genes that are there to help with longevity and well-being.
Right.
So there is absolutely a place for looking for those hardwired genetic diseases when you're young. But beyond that, I'm talking the only about 140-ish to 150-ish genes that are specific to optimal health and well-being, functional wellness, and looking at the drivers of chronic diseases and factors around your diet that are hardwired, meaningful, and what you can do something about.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're saying don't go to Amazon and order a genetics test on Amazon.
No,
go to a clinician like you that understands what they're looking at and can explain it.
Yeah. So I'm the distributor in the Western Hemisphere for Fit Genes USA. So the company I worked with was Fit Genes back in Australia. I'm now Fit Genes USA, and this is for what we do that's a bit different is that we don't sell directly to consumer. We want people to be under a health coach or licensed practitioner where there is an infrastructure and a structure and guidance and coaching, because people just suffer just overwhelming confusion, like I mentioned at the very beginning. And so if people are going to do genetics, I really, really, really want them to be under some sort of coaching umbrella with a practitioner of some sort. And the other thing is like making sure that the genes that are being tested are ones that actually matter the most, so that you don't get, again, drowned in the 300 health tips. And there's certain criteria around genetics there's dietary genes, and then there's the drivers of chronic disease genes. So the drivers of chronic disease, this is one of the main reasons I started with Fit Genes back in 2016, is because they're the only people that ever explained this to me, and they came up with it. So the chief science officer, Dr. Beaver, the history is that he was originally a PhD engineer, which is to his credit. Yeah. Now, both of his parents were diagnosed with cancer, so he pivoted to studying genetics because he was concerned about himself, his kids, and his grandkids, and he wanted to find out what could he do to deal with cancer and then also any other chronic issue. Right. So you think, well, he's an engineer. What business does he have to do looking at genetics? Well, one, if you ever met Paul, he's like one of the smartest people out there, but he's so painfully humble. Like, you don't realize how smart he is until he starts talking, but the way he talks, he's so unassuming that it just takes a minute to like clock in, like, wait a minute, this guy is brilliant, Yeah, right. So what does an engineer do? An engineer arranges a reliable, repeatable process that creates predictable outcomes every time. Sounds kind of perfect. Right. For genetics. Sounds literally perfect. Sure, yeah. He personally read over 5,000 genetics articles and figured out the 7 drivers of chronic disease. So there was 4 criteria for this section of the genetics. The 4 criteria is: 1, do the genes influence one of the 7 drivers of disease? The 7 drivers are inflammation, free radical damage, liver detox capacity, vitamin D utilization, not synthesis, utilization. Can you get vitamin D, the VDR genes? Can you get vitamin D from the blood into the cells? Not vitamin D into the blood, that's sunlight, food, or supplements, but right. From blood into the cells. So inflammation, free radicals, detox, vitamin D utilization, then it's methylation, then it's cardiovascular circulation, then it's fat and energy metabolism. And that's the order of priority also. So then that's first criteria. So then out of the 25,000 to 30,000 genes or so, you've got a whole bunch of them are pushed off the table, right. Not looking at those. Yeah. Then the next criteria is, what are the genes that are the most important amongst those 7 drivers? So back to inflammation, there's hundreds of genes directly or indirectly that affect or influence inflammation. He's found there's 15. Now, sometimes 16, because there's an extra third COX gene in there, but that's kind of inconsequential. But right. The 15 of those. The free radical genes. Well, 95% of the free radicals are generated where? In the mitochondria. So he's only interested in the 3 top free radical scavenging genes in the mitochondria: MN-SOD, GPX1, catalase. The other ones are fine. They're great. Yay. There's 3 SOD genes, but there's only one in the mitochondria, and that's the most important one because that's where 95% of the free radicals are. So again, it's this priority thing. So you pick the top priority one. So then you got a whole other mess of genes that are kicked off, and there's only fewer left on the table. Then the next criteria is that at least 10% of the population has these variations, at least a yellow or a red dot. So you're not testing some super obscure thing, which is important to those people. Again, that's where like the medical genetics side comes in. That's very important to those people, but I'm not looking for those people. I'm looking for what can I find in the general population reliably. And then the last criteria is that of the remaining genes, which ones have peer-reviewed research done on humans, not wombats or nematodes, but done on humans that show that you can shift the expression of the red and yellow dots to behave more and more like a green dot. So that's epigenetics. Epigenetics is my lifestyle and behavior and environment, which then shifts the expression of the gene from a red or yellow into a green-like behavior. Now, to be clear, I said behavior, not a green dot. A yellow and red dot will never become a green dot. That's not a thing unless you're dumb enough to inject CRISPR into your bicep. It's happened. Google it. Yeah, some idiot, 20-year-old Russian kid did CRISPR and his bicep is like 3 feet. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like he wanted bigger muscles. Well, he got it. So the thing is, like, your red and yellow dots will, through the correct lifestyle change, just like I did with my 13 red and yellow dots in inflammation, the correct lifestyle, according to one's genetics, will change the behavior, in my case, from massively pro-inflammatory to anti-inflammatory. But I have to be vigilant, because if I'm not, then the default setting will default back to yellow or red.
Right. And that's what we talked about that earlier, that some people that you test have those mutations, but aren't symptomatic.
Variations. I call them variations, yeah.
But they're not dealing with those things like you. But like you said, those never change. Those genetics never change. But you can change how it applies to your body.
How they respond. I think the best visual I came up with is that your genes are not a switch. It's not a tick tick tick. It's not a switch. It's more like a dial on a dashboard, like a speedometer. So, like, you've got the green section, the yellow section, the red section. Some people's needles defaults in the red, and you got to really work hard to get it and to keep it in the green. Other people's just are defaulted in the green, and then if they get lax, it can then kind of careen backwards into the yellow. Right. It goes in both directions. So your genes are not really a switch; they're more a dial, and which is good news, bad news. The good news is like the more you engage with proper, appropriate, healthy lifestyle, the better and better your physiology responds. The bad news is like, it's not just here's one thing you can do and suddenly bing, it's all the way over to green. It's additive and cumulative. All of your efforts kind of all synergize together.
Right. That's super interesting. So you still use the company that you rep here in the U.S.?
I'm literally the international instructor for the whole company, and I'm the instructor, and I design the reports for them. I've revolutionized their reports. They're brilliant scientists, but as a first and foremost a clinician. A scientist figures out what to do, but a clinician takes the science of what to do and figures out how to apply it. So they're the scientists. I'm the clinician who made it easier to implement and understand. That's my job. So what I did is I took all of their reports from these 7 drugs, the 70 odd genes for the the drivers, and then the other 70 odd genes related to diet and exercise. And made a single report called the Fit Genes Genetic Blueprint, which is what I then train coaches and practitioners on. I wanted to synthesize all of their original reports, if there's about a half dozen, into one report that is very clear, very organized. Like, here's the top things. It's like slide 6 of the report, page 6. Here's all the most important things around the diet. Here's the top 5 supplements according to your genetics. And by the way, I don't name a specific brand or company or product. It's like, here's the nutrigenomic ingredients, so that you as a coach or a practitioner have the leeway to decide with your client what is the best brand, company, product, whatever. Like, that's up to you guys. Other genetics companies try to pigeonhole you into like private label stuff. I don't do that. So diet, top 5 nutrients. Exercise. What's your fiber type? Are you fast, slow, or intermediate twitch, or are you meaning sprinter, more endurance, or mix? And then do you have any concerns around your collagen integrity? Because that means you're at higher risk of injury. Particularly like the CrossFitters out there, if they've got variations in their in the 2 main collagen genes, then they can have a much higher risk of injuries because their collagen doesn't have a high integrity. But then there's solutions attached to that if you have the variations, like collagen specific nutrients like collagen, vitamin C, inositol, creatinine, and then having proper recovery. And then the other main factor for exercise is like, are you prone to a risk of exercise induced inflammation and injury, muscle injury? Right. So then if that's a red and yellow dot from a specific cluster of genes that are massively influenced on the inflammatory side, spoiler, interleukin 6, TNF alpha, VDR1, VDR2, then that is a direct, literally a red and yellow flag, particularly combined if it's a red and yellow dot with the collagen genes, that you must focus on recovery.
So there is a, overtraining problem.
Oh yeah.
You could have that.
100%. I have that. Absolutely. That's one of the main things that I found in my case studies, and actually lectured at the genetics conference, at Fit Genes conferences, on exercise-induced obesity. And the obesity is not from calories from exercise. It's actually massive water retention from people who over-exercise and become net pro-inflammatory from over-exercising. You see this a lot in the CrossFit community. And so exercise is not a generic good. It's great if it's done correctly with correct training. You're not injuring yourself, and also you're not overdoing it, and you have proper recovery. Then it's fantastic. It's great. But you can overdo it, and then you become net pro-inflammatory, and as a result, start to swell with water weight because your body is busy trying to dilute all the inflammatory chemicals you just generated from over-exercising. The solution to pollution is dilution, and so inflammatory chemicals are damaging. And so your body's like, why does your body swell with water when you're inflamed? Look at someone who's histamine intolerant. Right. They swell with water. They're inflamed because the inflammation in your whole body that's distributed, that's diluting all the inflammatory chemicals. What is it doing? It's buying the liver and kidneys time to cycle the inflammation out. That's the whole point of it. It's buying time because the liver and the kidneys have a set rate given their particular health and what nutrients they have to detox. Like, you can't just like put it all through. That's not going to work. So you're buying time, and that's why they can swell up. One of the most I came up with a test to see if someone's a kind of a cutesy test. It's called the muffin test, not the muffin top, the muffin test. The muffin test is to see if you're an overinflamer. It's very simple. You eat a half muffin, and you swell with weight between 1 and 4 pounds on that same day. People whose weight that yo-yos like 1 to 5 pounds, 1 to 4 pounds in a day, particularly if they eat a half muffin, that is a dead giveaway that you're likely a hyperinflamer genetically. Now, that half muffin, unless it was last year's regifted Christmas fruitcake, did not weigh 1 to 4 pounds.
Right.
Okay. But what was it? It was all of the gluten, the pesticides, insecticides that attended the gluten-based grains. It was the sugars, the dough conditioners, the toxic chemicals, the preservatives, the frosting, the colorings, the sugar, whatever plastic weirdness leached through the little wrappy-doo around the base of the cupcake. All of that is massively pro-inflammatory. It's basically an micro-inflammation bomb you're introducing into your system, and your body goes poof with 1 to 4 pounds. And for people whose weight just fluctuates like this, up and down like that, that is a dead giveaway you're likely a hyperinflamer, which is a different strategy to drop weight than calorie restriction. It's very different. Like in genetics, there's 3 main types of weight: inflammatory water weight, toxic hormonal weight, and then calorie fat weight. And I find by far the most common cause of stubborn excess weight is inflammatory water weight, not caloric fat weight. That's real, but it's rarer than the inflammatory water weight. So in genetics, you can look and be like, oh, this person's a hyperinflamer. And then
it sounds like these variants and these problems like this are pretty much treated, not with medicine, but with diet, exercise, supplementation.
They wouldn't be on the list unless they weren't able to do that. That was one of the 4th criteria. The 4th criteria, if there wasn't a way to influence the expression of the genes that was not that wasn't related to nutrition, lifestyle, diet, exercise, or some combination, they didn't even make it onto the test. Now that was the genius of Dr. Beaver. Like if people want to hear from the horse's mouth, he doesn't really give interviews anymore, but he's let me interview him. I've got 2 interviews of him. One from 2017. It was an audit when I had my radio show back in New Zealand. It was a radio interview, and then in 2019 I did a video interview with him. So that was his criteria. So that's the health, well-being, longevity, 7 drivers of disease part of it. Then you've got the whole dietary side of it, where you're looking at the trigger foods. So people have genetic realities around the most common trigger foods. So some people are genetically, you got to look at your relationship to gluten genetically. Some people are at risk of celiac disease genetically. And if you've got the gene for that, you got to stop gluten, just full stop. Some people are genetically vulnerable to lactose, which is the milk sugar, and they can't digest it. Now, yes, there is, lactose pills and so on and so forth, but the reality is that some people would do better off of dairy. And even when people do have the lactase gene, rather, the enzyme that breaks down lactose, there's other things in modern dairy, like a lot of casein and whey, that sometimes people can't digest anyways. So even if they are able to digest lactose, they may not be able to digest the casein or whey. Then people have a genetic reality around caffeine. Some people, like me, have caffeine-induced anxiety and depression. Now, remember, I was drinking coffee since I was 6 years old.
Right.
And I was like, I'm getting energy, but really I was also getting an anxiety attack and conflating it, thinking it was energy. And then later on, I was like, what if I put enough coconut oil in it? My coffee's bulletproof. And the thing is, for some people like me, genetically, I still can't tolerate caffeine, even if it's laced with coconut oil.
Right. Not that it's bad for everybody.
No, not bad for everybody. Not at all. I mean, some people, it's amazing. And I'm not one of them, unfortunately.
Right.
So, and then there's people who are genetically histamine intolerant. So histamine is the body's flood switch. And if you know you're histamine intolerant and you eat high histamine foods, or you eat foods that make your own body produce more of its own histamine, or you eat foods that block the enzyme that breaks down histamine,
right.
All those 3 methods, you'll just increase histamine in your body through some foods do more than one. If you eat a high histamine food and you're vulnerable to it, it's like the equivalent of swallowing, it's like eating a full body, slow moving bee sting. And so you're swelling with water through your whole body. And people with histamine intolerance, they are like fatigue, foggy brain, lots of water weight, indigestion, sometimes hives, and congestion. Yeah. And, but the one thing is weight, they have this weird watery, puffy weight,
right.
And no exercise is getting rid of it.
Right.
And sometimes people's puffy inflammatory weight is an inflammatory response to foods. And then there's also other clusters of genes that look at how reactive are you to food intolerance, food sensitivities in general. Like some people are just more sensitive to the most common allergens in general. So so they're just putting them on an elimination diet. So and then there's other genes on your diet and behavior. Some people have the genes that are they don't feel full, and fullness is in the brain, not the stomach, and it's genetically mediated. So people who don't feel full genetically, they have a tendency to overeat on normal amounts of food. So you may be thinking, well, if I got the gene for that, I have this, by the way. If you got the genes for that, doesn't that mean like you're all is lost? So no, it just means that my tendency to overeat is hardwired. So I'm better off controlling my environment, not my willpower.
And I think that's what people need to understand too. This is a propensity.
Mm-hmm.
You have a propensity to have this.
Totally.
It doesn't mean you're going to.
Mm-hmm.
But in your case, you did like everything that you could possibly do wrong, unbeknownst to
me, yeah,
to cause all this to happen.
Yeah, I'm surprised I'm even alive, honestly. So, yeah, it's risk. There's like I have the red dots for blood pressure. I don't have high blood pressure, and I have lots of salt. And it's like it's you have the risk for these things showing up. And for some people, they're like, well, I don't have the thing, and it says I should. That means the genetics are wrong. It's like, no, it's not wrong.
Right.
It's that you either were born with enough physiological resilience from what was endowed to you by your parents, or you're living a sufficiently well enough lifestyle that these weak links in your genetic chain have not broken yet. So just keep doing what you're doing, but don't run on fumes. Like don't just live off the don't live off the success of what was gifted to you. Like actually be proactive going forward.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of these genetic tests help so much, because now you know.
Yeah.
What is my risk tolerance here?
Totally.
What can I do? How can I keep these things down?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know. And so tell me, what is kind of your patient? What's your perfect patient?
So the people that I serve are those. There's two types. There's people who are going from chronic to normal, and then normal to optimal. The most people I've found out are doing like chronic to normal, simply because I walked that journey for so long, and I've designed frameworks around that. And then there's the people who are from normal to optimal. Those are more like aspirational longevity enthusiasts, biohackers, and athletes and whatnot. And the approach is similar. It's just the depth and severity and duration of support is vastly different. My personal opinion is that genetics testing is at the foundation of all of it. When people have asked me, because when I'm on other podcasts, and I've been on several hundred, they're like, well, what's the most important test you should do? It's like, well, if you had to pick one and one only, then I'm looking at the test from a framework of what's the highest value over the longest period of time. So I love gut testing. I almost worked as one of the clinical advisors for a lab company that you would know in the States. I've designed mitochondria panels for labs. I'm the issue I have is with the highest value of the longest period of time. You have to repeat those tests after 3, 6, 9, 12 months, depending on the test. And I love those tests, but it's like if it was one test, it would be genetics, because I now have the information for life.
Right, doesn't change. And
you can amortize whatever you invested over how many decades you want to plan on living, and it comes down to basically nothing. Right. You amortize it over those decades, and so I put the foundation as genetics. If you were to twist my arm and say like, what's the next most important test? If I were to throw a dartboard, it would be likely gut or mitochondrial, depending on what they're expressing.
Right.
So, but likely gut would be the next most important. If I had to pick two, it would probably be those two.
Yeah.
So, my what I'm so I still work with I work with people in a group coaching context around the genetics. Individually, if they're wanting more of like the functional labs, like those gut tests, this hormone, the mitochondria, the mold, metals, environmental toxins, Lyme, like that's a lot more involved than here's a really straightforward, customized to your specific genes genetics report. Here's my 6-month implementation program. Here's my learning library, and here's a group coaching because I do the group coaching calls, and I have like my program DNA Decoded. It's like a 6-month group coaching genetics program, and that's really makes it super affordable and scalable for people.
Great.
And honestly, people ask questions on the calls. It's like that applies to 90% of the time. Everyone either has the same question or they're like, oh yeah, that applies. Like it's applicable. So I love that model because it's a way to make genetics really accessible. And this genetics is very unique compared to the other genetics that are out there. One, because it's prioritized. Two, it's really easy to understand because I've summarized it and distilled it into what's actionable and in order of priority. And then it also includes this other, that keto, paleo, Mediterranean, high carb test. That's not a test you can get from 23andMe or Ancestry because it's a different type of genetics analysis.
Yeah.
We talked about green, yellow, red.
Yeah.
We're not talking between 1 and 20. Totally different analysis. We're looking at not the green, yellow, red version of this gene that makes amylase in saliva or the enzyme that breaks down carbohydrates, the first stage of carbohydrate digestion. We're looking at how many copies or duplicates of that gene you have. Because it's like, imagine your intestines are a fort and you've got the Vikings charging your fort and you want as many cannons lining that fort to cut them down. So the Vikings in this case are carbohydrates. The fort is your intestines, and the cannons are the number of duplicates of this gene that makes the enzyme that breaks down carbs in the saliva. So, and this is one of those times where the variation, the green, yellow, red version of the camera is really kind of insignificant. Like the difference between the green version, the red version, and the yellow version is not really that much at all that's meaningful. So I'd rather have 15 cannons as opposed to 1. I'd rather have 15 red cannons than 1 green cannon.
Right.
Now, you can have up to 20. I had 2. I had the second lowest possible. And so I had a very low carb tolerance. And that's a different machine. It's a separate swab. It's a whole separate analysis. And so when people are getting their genetics tests, they get the benefit of all the green, yellow, red dots, but they also get the benefit of this extra test that is just not, it's like almost no one knows about it.
Right.
And it absolutely changed my life. And it's if people knew what their macros were, it'd be huge. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the biggest epigenetic influences you can have of like, what are your macros?
Right.
And and you can end this stupid infighting of like, oh, I'm high carb, I'm keto, I'm paleo. It's like you just end all of that. It's like, well, just test yourself and stop arguing.
Right?
Yeah.
So everybody's going to be different.
Totally. And
I don't think most people understand that a lot of it's based on genetics.
Yeah, people have genetic realities, and they have I call genes are fixed but flexible. You can do something about your genes. There are limits. It's like how big is your sandbox? You can play inside your sandbox, and people's sandboxes of different parts of their physiology, whether it's detox or inflammation or carbs, like people have different size sandboxes, like different combinations of it. And I want to know what my size of my sandbox is. Yeah. And I can play in that. My hope for people is like that they can just not be scared of genetics or intimidated by it, and that they feel like it's practical and winnable and empowering, as opposed to the opposite of that.
Right. So I'm guessing, I don't know where we are in time, but so I'm guessing you're taking on new patients.
I'm taking on new clients, but my primary, I do that. My primary joy right now is to also support health coaches and practitioners
Okay,
empower their clients and patients
great.
to implement genetics for them and to make it really, really easy. Like it used to be, you had to spend 3 hours to analyze genetics.
Right.
I think with my system, I've cut it down to like 15, 30 minutes.
Great.
Like it's really efficient.
So if a practitioner wants to add this into their repertoire of
Yeah. So for the
clinical stuff, they can reach out to you and you can get
Totally.
them hooked up, help them understand, help them read the tests so they can explain it to
Mhm.
patients.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so there's two. So for the practitioners and health coaches, it's fitgenesusa.com, fitgenesusa.com.
Okay.
For people who just want to get theirs done under my group coaching umbrella, that would they go to just drsamshay.com, drsamshay.com, and they can just click on DNA Decoded up there. And then for people who have more complexity, they can schedule a free discovery call with me on my webpage.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think that's all the time we have, I think.
Thank you.
So great. Yes, that was super informative. You taught me a lot. So I might reach out to you. Get some help.
Happy to help.
Yes. Well, thanks, Sam. We
You're very
really
welcome,
appreciate
Dave.
it.